Welcome back. Welcome to episode 2 in our Best Practices of Billing series. In the last video, we reviewed logging into the Vinovation software as well as generating the transactions and the adjustment summary report. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to focus primarily on the Excel functions that are used. We're going to be using some keypad functions, not just mouse functions, and we will talk about those as we do them. It's a little easier than moving your hands from your keyboard to your mouse, then back to your keyboard, then back to your mouse. And they're just little shortcuts that could help you in many different areas. So stick around. As I say in this video, Excel functions, and in the next video we will take a look at the different perspectives in reconciliation and talk about the theories based around that. Thanks. Alright, so I talked about some keyboard functions that we are going to be using rather than using our mouse. So I just wanted to give a quick highlight, and we will reference them here in just a moment with the screenshots. But if you use your arrow keys up and down, left and right, in conjunction with Control, what will happen is it will jump from the top of a document to the next open space. So if you've got, say, 40 lines of data, a space, and then another 40 lines of data, if you go Control down, it will take you to that first space. If you do Control down again, it would take you to the next space. If you were to go Control right, it will take you to the farthest right, and Control left will take you to the farthest left. So this allows us to be able to navigate quickly through the data, but not only does it do that and save you from scrolling up and down, it will also copy the cells for you. So if we are in the top left corner and we go Control Shift and we go down, it's going to highlight everything in that column. If then we continue holding Control Shift and press right, it's going to highlight every cell to the right of that until you come to a space. From there, Control C will copy, and then you can simply navigate using your mouse or your handheld mouse to the cell you want and press Enter, and it will paste all of that data into those cells.
Alright, so we are taking a look at the adjustment summary now. And so this is the report that we exported out of the Vinovation software, and this is where we can see our pluses and our minuses here. So the numbers picked 2. That means that we adjusted in 2 terry cloth sweatbands. Here we see a -1. That means we adjusted out 1 battery. So in this issue where we added 2, it could be anything from there being a return bin on the top of the machine, and we get to the machine and see these items and we place them back in the machine. And so on a consignment type account, this means that we build them or are going to build them based upon the number of transactions. So let's say overall there were 14 terry cloth sweatbands dispensed, but they gave us 2 back. We don't want to bill them for those extra 2 that we put back in the machine. So this 2 would be applied against the transactions. Same thing with this battery. There is always a possibility of an additional item dispensing or slipping out of the coil, or whatever may have happened. There may have been a stocking discrepancy, could be one of about 5 or 6 different things that happened, but regardless, the driver did an audit and adjusted out 1 battery. We can see on these gloves, -1, -1, -2, -6 on the glasses, and so on that day. So there were a few discrepancies. The folding knife, 16 adjusted out. So not sure if there's a possibility that when they left the warehouse, they didn't have the product with them, and so once they restocked the machine, they had to adjust them out. Not really sure, but that doesn't really matter. So what we're looking at is we need to get all of this information onto one document. So we've got 2 documents currently. We've got the adjustment summary and we have the transaction report. So what we're going to do is we're going to manipulate the adjustment summary a little bit before we copy it all and move it over. So this top bit of information, we really don't need that. So we're going to highlight this, and we're going to right click, and we're going to delete those rows so that all we have is the headers and the data. So now we're going to click on the upper left corner, and what we want to do is we want to highlight and copy all of this information. So a couple of ways we can do this. We can either click and drag, which on large pieces of information isn't always the most effective way. What I like to do is use the keypad. So if I press and hold Control-Shift and then I press right, it will take me to the far right edge of the data. If I then continue pressing and holding Control-Shift and press down, it highlights everything for me. And so now we can either right-click copy, or we can go Control-C, and that has copied everything. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to add it to the transaction report data. But since the columns don't match, what we're going to do is we're going to hit the little plus sign, and we're going to add a tab, and we're going to hit Control-V. And that has pasted all of that data. While it's highlighted, we can double-click in the A cell, and it will expand. Select everything, double-click, and it will expand the data so that we can see everything clearly. So now what I want to do is I want to double-click on the bottom, and I want to make sure I know what the data is, and I'm going to say this is the adjustment. So now we've got our adjustment tab, and we've got our report tab, all on one document. We're going to do the same thing to the transaction information. We're going to highlight these top 4 rows. We're going to delete it. So from here, there's a bunch of columns that we don't necessarily need. Let's expand this information just like we did before. All right, so we don't necessarily need the date. We don't need the bin. We don't need the site. We don't need the machine. We don't need the number or the employee. So let's highlight those, right-click, delete. We do need the item number and the description. This particular account uses some allocation codes where they track, as we can see, cost center, departments, product restrictions, and truck numbers. Let's, again, highlight and get rid of that data because we really don't need it. And delete. So now we've got package quantity. We don't need pricing on this. So let's get rid of the pricing. And the total transaction price, we don't need that either. So we've got item number, description, package quantity, and the numbers dispensed. Let's do the same thing to the adjustment report. So we don't need the account, the site, the machine, the manufacturer number, or the manufacturer name. We'll delete those. We have item number, description, package quantity, number picked, and let's get rid of the date because we don't need that either. So we've got the same data here. And what we have to do now, though, is we have to convert these numbers from negatives to positives and positives to negatives, because this data is reflecting this one was removed, which means we need to bill for it. However, being a negative number, it would reflect opposite on the transaction report because the software is developed so that an item being dispensed from the machine is a positive number. So it's inverted. So to make that information the same so that we bill for this item, because if we were to compare this against that, we would actually credit for this one and not bill. So what we need to do is invert that we gave them 2 back. So if this was a -2 on the terry cloth sweatbands on the overall number, we need it to adjust and reduce the total number from the transaction report so that we don't bill them for them. All right, so now what we want to do is to convert these, we're going to go -1 in an empty cell. Then we want to copy it, so Control-C or right-click copy. And then we're going to click on this, and we're going to, again, Shift-Control down so it's all highlighted. We're going to right-click and paste special. What we want to do is multiply that number times that -1. And remember, that top number was a 2. It's now a -2. So this is the information that we want. So now that that is there, all these numbers have been inverted from negative to positive or positive to negative and is in the correct format for our purposes. So we don't need the headers. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over, we're going to shift control right and down to get all the data, control C. Now we're going to come over to the report tab and we're going to click on one of the cells, and we're not going to do shift control this time. We're just going to control down, and that takes us to the bottom of the document. Press down one more time and hit enter, and all of the data that we needed from the adjustments is now on our transaction report. So we can see that terry cloth, -2, +1, +1, +1, +2, +6, -4. So now these numbers will reflect appropriately against the transactions. Now that we've got that, we're going to navigate to the top, and we are going to click on the upper left cell. We're going to shift control right and shift control down so that everything is selected. Then we're going to go to the data tab. Under the data tab, we have the sort feature. We're simply going to select sort, and this allows us to choose how we want to sort things. We want to sort things by the item number, so all those items are grouped together. We're going to go sort by item number, and we want them A to Z, Z to A. It really doesn't matter. A to Z would put things in alphabetical order from the top to the bottom, and the reason we would do this, especially using Epicore's P21, is there are some features where we can input a job contract and then reflect everything in alphabetical order so things would match and make it incredibly easy to write an order off of. So now that we've got everything in alphabetical order grouped together, we don't need the Clark-owned drills. We can get rid of those. So we'll highlight them and delete them. All right, so now that we've got those drills out, we're going to come to the top. We're going to highlight everything. Now under this data tab, we're going to come over to the far right and select subtotal. So we want our subtotals to change on every item number that we see. We want it to add everything up, and we want the subtotal based on the packages dispensed. Simply select OK, and it's grouped everything together and the total number of transactions for those items. So if I come up to the top, we can see that item number, all that stuff is still there, and we can see this duct tape, package quantity 1, they dispensed for a total of 4. So this is great data, but it's still a little messy to look at. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to come over here and we're going to click on the number 2, and it gives us line by line with the numbers dispensed, and these are the numbers that we would bill for that billing period. We can see here that this item actually has a total of -2. So we actually put more in than they dispensed. So that would be a credit. If we open this cell up a little bit, we can see -35. So these might be some reasons that you would ask, what's going on here? Why are we giving them 35? Is there something wrong? And maybe talk to the driver, the account manager, and find out what's going on with that particular product.
All right, so we just took a look at quite a bit of Excel function, and if it's new to you, hopefully you learned a little bit. If you are an Excel wizard, please don't criticize me too much. But anyway, so in the next video, we're going to look at reconciliation, and if you need more help in generating transaction reports and exporting them, take a look at the first video and stick around for more.